When the credits start rolling, but the movie keeps haunting you.
Before, after.
Then it's time to tune in to Dismembering Horror. We'll talk about what worked and also what didn't. We'll dissect every aspect. Maybe some of we shouldn't.
He turned out to be a completely unreliable asshole.
Take it away, boys.
Hello, Tim.
Hello, Ryan.
And hello, everyone listening. Welcome to episode 192 of Dismembering Horror, everyone's favorite podcast show where we dismember horror. Today we are dismembering Blood Rage from 1987. For Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Great. All right. Well, anything else you want to touch base on, Tim, before we jump into Blood Rage?
What I was just thinking, Ryan, is how similar in persona and name you are to Rihanna. You're like a couple letters away.
I'll take that as a really good compliment.
Yeah, she's coming back, baby.
Cool. I didn't know she went anywhere.
She didn't, but she's got a song on the Wakanda Forever soundtrack, and
I can rely on you for that kind of news.
Yep.
The Marvel news. Cool. All right. Well, we like to jump into our films to be discussed with a trailer. So we only could really find a re-release trailer, a kind of funky re-release trailer from the Arrow video release of this. So that's what we're going to watch. So I'm going to give it the full intro here. Directed by John Grissmer, written by Bruce Rubin, and all put together and produced by Marianne Cantor. Here we have the film with the working title Complex, retitled to Slasher, with the released version with gore cut out of it from theaters as Nightmare at Shadow Woods, and then finally known today, thanks to its VHS release, as Blood Rage. Blood Rage.
Looks like you're gonna get a chance to meet the rest of the family. My psychotic brother just escaped.
Hot bread, everybody.
Here's to the new family. I think I got you.
Hey, who's that good-looking chick there?
I don't know. Got to have friends here. This place is slow death.
Oh, we'll find something for you to do.
Looks like you two have had
Quite a party.
Here I am.
I think that you should go home too, because there's a bad person out here tonight.
Okay.
So go home and don't let anybody in.
Okay.
Hi.
My God.
All right, there we go. Blood Rage. Tim, is it worth explaining what was so unique about that trailer?
No.
Okay, just type in Blood Rage trailer if you want to see a unique take on how to spice up a trailer.
Right.
Okay, so
some intrigue for you to, chase down.
So Tim, I was sad we couldn't watch this one together because I think that this is one of those that would have been especially fun.
Yeah.
But alas, what would you tell yourself regarding this film via our rating system? Would you tell yourself to avoid, stream, rent, or buy Blood Rage?
I think it's bad. I mean, it's really bad. So it's tipping into that just what the hell am I watching camp, unintentional camp, maybe. I don't know. It's so bad on so many levels that it kind of makes it great. But I don't it wasn't landing enough in that realm to be like, oh, I should watch this every year kind of thing. So I'm just going to say it's a stream.
Okay. I am going to say rent it. I could see watching it with the right group or a crowd. It is something I would just want to have handy. I mean, just kind of seeing that highlight reel from the trailers there, I'm like, oh, there's some pretty great stuff in this.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm rent it for now, for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Great. Well, Tim, and this is also one of those films where I would just love to get a summary of the story from you. Just whether you watched it or not, and we hope you did, because that's the spirit of the show. We just watched this film and are getting together as friends to talk about it. Spoilers abound, if you consider that a thing. What happened in Blood Rage?
Okay, so Jesus. Well, you've got these twins. You got twin boys. A trope, that we love to revisit. Twins. And I guess we kind of deduce pretty quickly that one of the twins is a psychopath. They're young. They're like, I don't know, 12 or something. And they're at a drive-in, and they sneak out of their mom's car. She's on a date with some dork. And they see another young couple having sex in their car, and one of the twins, the psychotic twin, hatchets the dude in the face a bunch of times, and then pretty immediately hands the hatchet to his brother, who's in shock.
We might want to figure out names at this point and just commit.
Sure, Terry is the psycho. And Todd is the non-psycho. So Terry hands Todd the hatchet before anybody shows up. And this leads to Todd being convicted of the murder and put into a mental institution. And we then show up, 10 years later?
Yep.
And Terry, the psycho, has been living with his mom, seemingly just, getting by, being fine, not committing any crimes that we know of, while Todd has been in essentially a comatose state and is just starting to kind of come out of it with his therapist and reveal. Does he reveal to her then that he didn't do it and that he was just in shock? I think that's sort of what's going on. But that gets kind of pushed aside as just his psychosis. So wrongfully accused Todd escapes from his the mental institute, and the family finds out on Thanksgiving, during Thanksgiving dinner, and they all get kind of freaked out, but maybe not freaked out enough. I don't know. But this makes Terry...
They react uniquely.
Yeah, there's a lot of unique reactions in this movie. But this, I guess, is two things I think are the impetus for Terry kind of snapping and going on this killing spree, which is what he does. The main one is that his mom announces at the Thanksgiving dinner that she's going to get married to her now new boyfriend, or seemingly newish. And he does not take that well. He drinks his milk. He's like 17 or 18, right? Or 19 or something like that. So he's drinking some milk at the table with his cool popped collar and red tie that's loose, very 80s. And he kind of very passive aggressively gives now you're the man of the house to the new dad or husband or whatever you want to call him. And then pretty immediately the phone call happens. They find out that Todd is on the loose, and Terry is just like, well, I guess it's time for me to start killing again. Since since Todd is out, I think the idea is that Terry thinks, well, I could go unleash my desire to kill because there's again a patsy who I can blame it all on. Maybe that's what he's thinking. So he does. He goes around. Wait, what was the name of the little complex? The
original title of the film.
Shadow Woods.
Yeah.
So he goes around Shadow Woods just carving people up. It's pretty great in that respect. I mean, it's just like, and they go all out. So, lots of chopping and stabbing and killing. It's cool. This all winds up, he's got his teenage friends that are all around and having to kind of navigate Todd being on the loose and people getting killed. Not by Todd, but they all think it's Todd. And it culminates effectively with Todd and Terry confronting each other, and Todd trying to stop Terry from killing. And they have a battle in the Shadow Woods, local pool, the community pool, I guess. And the mother, who has been, we'll talk about her more, but she shows up. She's distressed, and she shows up, and she thinks Terry is Todd because she sees him attacking. Oh man, it's confusing. She sees Terry attacking Todd, but she thinks that the roles are reversed, and so she thinks Terry is Todd, and she still thinks Todd is the killer and the bad guy, and so she shoots Terry thinking that it's Todd, and she kills him only to find out that it was the other way around, and this is too much for her to take, so she kills herself. And that's it. That's the movie.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, there is much more to be dismembered in the film after your wonderful overview there. Thank you, Tim. So let's do it and get on into it. Here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I feel like for this kind of film where, 80s slashers, what are the things I'm looking for first to scratch certain itches and whatnot? This one, let's say we've done Demon Wind, we've done Tourist Trap, and this is right up there with, I don't know what to call it, except for just an overall weirdness appeal. And what that is exactly is probably best demonstrated via examples that we'll just, get to here. But like you mentioned, we'll get to the mom more so. She's
something else.
She's the beating heart and soul of this film, Tim.
Clearly.
Ironically,
who does absolutely nothing in the entire film.
Well, she's doing something with that nothing. She's sitting on the floor of the kitchen, hand feeding herself with leftover green beans and corn, I believe. So that's the mom, and she goes on. she's.
We should at least give credit where credit's due. Her name is Louise Marie Lasser.
Louise Lasser as Maddie Simmons.
Yeah, and she was in other stuff over the years.
She starred in a big TV show.
Yep, Mary Hartman. Yeah, so like she had a career. It's not like this was sort of she's a weird one-off, like something. She was a legit actor out of the actor's studio and stuff, and so whatever's going on in this movie, I think is largely her being like, I'm gonna just go ham and do some deep actor's studio like sense memory stuff or something.
She, to jump ahead to things of note, because I did watch the interview with her, she got the advice from actually her peers to not go to acting school, but just to take that they thought a natural approach behooved her. She did have an acting coach, though, just to kind of, I guess, tie the reins in. But she let those reins go at the same time and just gave it her all and gave a committed performance, and it's kind of wonderful. So that worked for me.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It's not I don't even know what to classify this as. I've seen it over the years. I've been in lots of acting classes with a large range of experience, talent, whatever you want to call it. But you do come across this particular style every once in a while, and it's really hard to identify what it is, because it's like, it's not at all how human beings behave. So it's like an idea of how humans might behave in this scenario, but like there's this buffering almost that seems like it's happening in the performer's brain in the performance. It's very strange, and it can actually turn out to be really compelling because it's just so odd. So given the right circumstances of what's going on in the story, it kind of can work, but it is a bizarre way to behave.
Well, yes, it is. But I will propose a different maybe theory as to where that's coming from. Sure, when you say it's not like how anyone would act, maybe it's not how most people would react.
Yes, that is true.
And you have certain unique individuals who, when they commit to a very honest performance, will show a side of themselves normally not seen ever.
Mm-hmm.
Especially under extremely traumatic situations like this. She admitted in, the comment, or no, in the interview with her, her reacting to the dad, her husband's death, boyfriend's death, whatever, was the hardest acting assignment scene she had ever done, just because she just couldn't think of how anyone would act. So she just kind of tried to put all her emotions in it and see what came out. So that's kind of what makes me think, she was doing her job of making it honest and emotional, but like not coming from a place like you're saying of how does one act. It's very raw.
Yeah, it is a weird. I've always been a bit fascinated by this thing because, like I said, I've seen it before, but it's really hard to understand what is actually going on. And even when you ask people who do this thing, I'm not sure that they can evaluate it usually, but you made me think of a possibility is that when you don't know how you would react in a situation, you're then thinking about the fact that you don't know how to react. And you're thinking about, it's almost like, so, and this is a thing that happens to actors often, is that if you think of acting as an expression of what's going on with you, some of the better advice, I guess, or coaching that I've seen out there is to think outwardly, like you're sending what you're experiencing out into the viewer or the audience or whatever. But what I think is happening here is actually a syndrome of a thing that is often detrimental to actors, which is to point the focus that you're experiencing in the moment back on yourself. And it becomes this weird echo chamber or loop inside yourself as the performer, where you're trying not to think because you're trying to think about what you're experiencing, but you're looking at how you're experiencing it. So you're like, it's like an inward eye thing that happens. And the result often is this weird, like, you're not paralyzed, but you're in this sort of like you're in like a personal cocoon suddenly, and you're having this strange experience for yourself, and we're watching it. And because you're not actually pushing your experience outward, there's this divide that happens between you, the performer, and us, the viewer or audience. And I think that weirdness, it's almost like interference, is what we're sort of experiencing, watching it, going, what is going on? And sometimes it's really compelling, and other times it's not. It's just strange and it doesn't work. But in this case, because the movie itself is also strange and has like I don't know, I would almost say a kind of like a lack of point of view in a weird way from a directing standpoint, that they're just like, yeah, man, let's just go with it. It's weird and it feels strange, and at least something is going on, even though we don't necessarily know how to identify it or like know what to think of it. So in that sense, like I think it's all really kind of cool and in the bizarre realm, and bizarreness in horror often is great. And I think it works here.
Especially in 80s slashers, I want to say.
Yeah. A twin slasher.
To kind of continue on the thread where we started, weirdness is the big overall what worked for me here. You connected it back, bizarreness, same thing, kind of sort of here. Just the location itself, it's just this apartment complex. It almost just kind of makes you go, okay. But it's great because it's unique and idiosyncratic and in Florida, and there's like the ramps that are going through the forests and just all these locations that kind of look the same, the little weird porches. It's just like one of those places where like if you're hanging out somewhere and you'd be like, wow, I could never picture a movie being shot here. It's just so normal. Yet they do, and it's just kind of incredible somehow.
I actually, that was a big thing for me that I was like, this is kind of great that we're so used to the suburban, like moderately affluent, neighborhood feel, like a nice house, white people, blah, blah, blah. Not that there are any non-white people in this movie, but, there's a very specific sort of realm that we see so much of horror, especially the slasher horror. It's this suburbanite kind of realm. And this is a apartment/condo complex. And I had personally, I don't know about you, I've lived in these places and I've also worked for these places in my life. So it's
nothing
I was
this
like, oh, yeah.
amongst nature I haven't been in. I've been in apartment complexes that have fully, but yeah, that was what was unique about this place. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Rochester, New York, which is sort of suburbia, quintessential maybe. But like when we first moved there, we lived in a condo complex just like this, for like 6 months or something like that. And then eventually my parents bought a house. But those 6 months were weird, and like, I guess I was just the right age to like for it to, and it was a new city. So we had just moved there. And so it was my first experience with that city in a new place, in a new home. And it really is an eerie, environment to be in. Even now, when I think about it, I'm like, God, what a weird place that all was. And then when I worked for, a apartment condo complex that had like multiple buildings, so much like this, I was doing like maintenance, groundskeeping, like all that shit. And it's the same vibe. It's really strange. This suburban communal living environment has a very specific feel to it, and having a horror film there, I don't know. There's something, I guess, just inherently, to me, I guess, inherently eerie or creepy about those places, because you, maybe much like city dwelling in apartments, you're surrounded by people, but you don't really necessarily know anybody. Maybe that's true for everything, but it's in a tighter space. And like, I think we see that moment in lots of slashers where, the final girl or some girl who's being chased runs up to a door and is, screaming for help, and nobody really answers the door. In an apartment complex, that's even more upsetting in a way to me, because everybody there presumably should be able to hear that, and nobody is answering. But that's sort of what apartment complexes tend to be like. Like everybody's like, yeah, I may share a wall with you, but I don't want to know what's going on in your life.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that whole environment is really creepy and cool.
I hear all that. Yeah. And it adds to, for me, what something I love. Like the best way to watch these movies, I think, is with friends. And then I did not do that I did not do it for this viewing, but like getting stoned and trying to make sense of the story and like the connective threads and everything like that. You don't know if it's because you're stoned or not, if it's hard to follow. I just think that's so much fun. So for this one, I didn't even need that because of just like the locations yourself. Maybe this is part of what is creepy for you. It's just disorienting too, because you have them knocking for help on doors and we don't know exactly which apartment they're in at any given time, and you're like, wait, okay, this is just another couple that's a neighbor, and how far away is it from where they just were? And then what's so unique about it, this feature that just keeps standing out to me as just weird and idiosyncratic, I keep using that word, is these back patios that open like directly to the lawn and are just open. I don't know what it is about that, but I mean, it's used in the movie. He just waltzes right up there and with the machete behind his back, and it's one of the best kills.
It's so
speaking
true,
of, he takes a
though.
joint. Yeah.
Those back sliding glass doors in those places are, I mean, I don't know what to think of it. They're just weird. I mean, it's weird because you kind of, it's this, I don't know how to describe it. It's this sort of bridge between like a luxury of having a back patio and totally being
You're opening a door to an expanse. It feels like in Beetlejuice, like opening the door to the Saturn or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like a super vulnerable thing to have. I mean, this is kind of tangential, I guess, but like this is how the Golden State Killer, for example, the serial killer who like nobody knew of for 50 years or whatever, and then finally got caught. But that was his whole MO, right? It's like these tract homes in California in particular, but this was everywhere. I mean, I remember them growing up too. I think it was a 70s, 80s era thing, but having these really kind of rickety back patios, sliding glass doors is how he got into most places, because there's no real good locking mechanism on those. I mean, my place in Hollywood got broken into through one of those because you could literally just jiggle the door and the lock, would fall and open up. So it's like it's scary. I think it's scary from that point of view, that it's accessible, you're vulnerable. And also looking through those windows into darkness, I still feel that way. I have a back patio here, and when the lights outside are off and I just stare out, you obviously can't really see anything, right? You're just seeing the reflection of the room you're in and then darkness behind it. And I always get that feeling of like, if somebody walks through right here, it's going to scare the living shit out of me.
Right. But the difference being when you open your door, there's a wall 10 feet away. And in this, it's just a secondary black pit of nothingness because there is no wall.
It's so much eerier.
So,
I love that.
The complex
setting is great.
Yeah. So to continue on the weirdness thread, though, kind of like we alluded to at the beginning, it's certain ways people act and react that just probably most make up the weirdness of it all. I think the first one that really got me was like, he comes back from the phone at the Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, everything like you described what he's wearing, it's just already just all feels weird. But it's when he just sort of sits back down and calmly goes, "My psychotic brother just escaped." like, okay. And there's like the stinger sound right afterwards. All right, guy. And then of course, I mean, maybe it could all be pretty well exemplified by the incredible, just on point, somehow perfectly apropos ending, which you described how it went down, but the important detail being where the mother and the surviving son just turn into both total psychosis mode and start both screaming, "I'm Todd," and she kills herself.
Yes.
And just for a little sense of like how crazy it really is, I love the moment too where like Karen's holding the baby and it's just, we like cut back to her after a long time and she's like, "All right, I'm out." And she's like, what was she thinking? Just, that was an insane thing she just witnessed. But like just them again committing to just wherever that came from of both screaming, "I'm Todd," until she shoots herself. It was great. And on point culmination of all this weirdness thus far.
Yeah, it occurs to me that I think part of what might be going on is, and I'm not trying to take away from the attempt at making a movie, but so much of these weird moments feel as though there was absolutely no conversation or deeper consideration for how to approach it from an acting point of view. That it's sort of like, it almost feels like when you're you're handed a script for the first time and they just say go, and you're like, well, I don't even know what's happening, so like I guess I'm just gonna say the lines and hope for the best. So there's you end up getting these very strange executions of lines where it feels to me like nobody was telling them how they wanted it or even giving them sort of direction at all, and just going, yeah, that's weird and cool, sure, let's just do it that way.
If I could be a fly on the wall for the moment where they captured my favorite line delivery of the whole film, which was when he kills the couple on the diving board, having sex on the diving board, and he walks up to them, like he's like right next to him. He gets super up close before I guess they really react, holds up the machete, and the way he says it, it's with a period, not an exclamation point, why it's so good. He goes, "You stop that." And then slashes them. It's so good. You stop that.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I wonder if the thing that we're feeling is, well, God, it could be so many things. It's part of it may be when actors, when they're feeling like they don't like the material or they're checking out from what the broader like goal of the story is, you get this almost kind of what that line in particular feels like, where they're just kind of over it. And they're just like, I'm just going to say the thing because I'm not getting any direction anyway, so screw it. Let's just suck.
That's not the sense, though, that I got from the actor's interview. Like, he said he had a great time and loved working with everybody, and he was allowed a lot of freedom from the director.
So maybe that's what it is being so untethered from a concept or direction or, even just some sort of thing to hold on to be like, this is what we're going for, that you end up with this kind of broadness of performance because they're really not being honed in any direction. And that can be a really good thing a lot of the time, because then you like, all bets are off. Like, the actors can just play. And so maybe that's what he was responding to, is that he was just like, we just had this freedom to do whatever. And nobody's saying, actually, that is strange or disconnected or whatever. Like, let's do it again. They're just saying, sure.
Great.
Yeah, why not? And like, that's kind of, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I don't personally think that it's good acting to be untethered like that. I think even when you're untethered, being a good director can take that and aim it, and you can get something really good. But I don't think that's exactly what was going on.
Right, but
here.
What are we talking about here? Because that was like one of my favorite moments of the whole film. Like, why I wouldn't want it any different
think
ever.
That what we're talking about is how when you have untetheredness and you let people be random and bizarre, that it can revert almost from us being like, wow, this is really bad acting, to, wow, that's just so odd that I'm tickled by it.
There's a humanity to it, I think, when when it's consistent enough.
Right. And it is, I will say, it is consistent in this. I mean, everybody is weird in this. And I don't mean weird like, oh, you're such a weirdo. It's just like, there's this strange vibe about how everybody is delivering lines. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of that they're delivering lines rather than like none of them feel like people to me in any way, right? Like they feel like actors doing a thing.
I love it. So I was kind of like, when setting off into this movie, I don't know, I was sitting down thinking, oh man, usually slashers like my favorites will be like, Prom Night 2, something with like a supernatural or like going out, like just some kind of that kind of weird element to it. But then I realized there's another kind of weird that I equally love. And that's when you have the super regular, average looking, like sandy-haired white guy going on the rampage, like very famous, the Garbage Day and Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 kind of thing. That
Yes.
that kind of thing. You know what? Like the moment there's like, we see his silhouette like walking, holding the machete, just with that walk he's doing. And my favorite shot in this film wasn't any of the wonderful gore in the film, but it's when we see him like in his full on mania. I think it's right after maybe he kills someone on that walking forest path. And it's just this like straight on shot where he's got the blood on his shoulder and he's just like proudly smiling and walking. And it's just like my favorite thing to see just a dude like that do that.
With that strut he has is so like, it's borderline Saturday Night Fever, where he's just like, hey, just strutting along, like no cares in the world, blood all over his shoulder, machete in hand, like, but he's just kind of like loving life. And right. I think that's hilarious.
It's so good. I mean, it's like that shot right there when I see it, when I go, oh, is this a buy it for me? Like, it doesn't get any better than that.
But the thing that's crazy too is that like, the gore and the gags of the gore are really amazing. Like it's the stuff that I like dream of doing. And like we'll talk about what isn't, where the failings are, but like this is some of the better gore gag stuff in any 80s film. I mean, it's so good. The woman, like him meeting the doctor in the woods and then just us not seeing anything and cutting to her cut in half is so over the top in the greatest way imaginable.
Yeah.
Like he slashed her with a machete at the waist. In half, completely in half. And then later when Todd finds the body, he like tries to put her back together. He like grabs the lower half and like slides it over to her upper half and then like kind of steps on the fake legs and like stumbles over. It's so hilariously good. In that respect. There's a reason it's bad, but there's a big reason that it's good. And the reason it's good is because they're just like, just go all the way.
Well, I think they're impactful and well executed too, where you can see they have limitations, but it works even maybe for the better because of them. Where like, let's say when you have where, remember, it's where he gets his foot grabbed? Oh no, it's where he gets slashed on the bridge. And when he gets slashed, I think it's like kind of on the shoulder or whatever, or is it just stabbed from behind? Anyway, it does a super quick cutaway with his legs kind of reacting, his feet going, and then cuts immediately back, and then we're in the effect. But it's just like, something about that works so well where I almost wouldn't want it to just be all one shot. It's fun to get that quick little detail of the legs reacting, of the feet reacting. So it's just pretty consistently like that throughout, where it's just good, just combination of shots, good, well storyboarded within your limitations, and like then where you just have the fun payoff shots, like the hand holding the soda can or whatever, that's still moving.
Dude, when he kills the guy, the guy on the date, the babysitters get told to go away, and then the mom of the baby is like getting ready, and somebody knocks on the door, and it's Terry, and the boyfriend or whatever he is, the date guy. I've loved this too. The mom is looking in the mirror and then turns to her baby and she says something like, "We're gonna get you a new daddy tonight," and like puts on lingerie, but like going to the door, we know he's been killed, obviously, and she looks through the peephole and presumably just sees his face there.
Mm-hmm.
The gag that she does when we see what she's seen through the peephole, but that she didn't realize that it was a dismembered head or a decapitated head hanging there. That whole sequence, the gag of it, I think that's why I like it, because they are gags. Right? They are irreverent and they know what they're doing and they're timed out as a gag, right? They're edited properly in that respect, with that point of view of like, oh, set up, punchline kind of gags. And they are funny in spite of being incredibly graphic. And so that's a really hard line, I think, to get right when you're doing gore. And it's some of the types of gore that I love. I mean, I off the top of my head, I can't think of. I mean, besides like Evil Dead. Evil Dead is like the quintessential for me. But like that's a hard thing to nail. Gags that are funny. You know who does it actually is Weird Al in UHF. Like those are gags and they go really, really far. Like Conan the Librarian is one of the skits in UHF.
Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System?
Exactly. Like, so there is a sense of humor behind this. And like, it doesn't matter that it's literally impossible to bisect a human body with a machete in the way that he does to the boyfriend, husband, future husband, whatever.
Bill.
Or even just, Bill, like just chopping somebody's hand off. It's like, that's probably like cutting somebody in half with a machete. All of those things like are completely absurd, but that is the gag. Right? Like cutting a dude's head off and hanging it by like an extension cord so that she sees it through the peephole. Like that's hilariously dumb and amazing.
Right. Well, it's a lot of things. I think you might have been on point where it feels like the director had no point of view. He's in the, I started listening to the commentary track. He didn't really, was only kind of speaking when prompted by the producer or whoever. But it's hard because it rides that line where it's like, yeah, they're gags, I guess, but I also just feel like they're just doing kill scenes almost,
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think maybe, who knows whether or not they were thinking it in terms of gags, but how they view the kills, it just is that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's their sense of how you do a kill, which makes me kind of think that that's where all their focus was, that it wasn't so much hey, let's lean in on the story and like make a artistic, beautiful expression of story. Let's just, get through the scenes where people are talking so we can get to the kill.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for better or worse, I guess, I think the kills are by far, to me, the absolute strength of the film.
Well, I wanted to shout out to Bill's death, the date's death, because that is Ed French, who played Bill, who did all of the effects.
So I was just trying to find that. So do we know anything about him? Because I'm
he's worked on other films, and
awesome.
I mean, his own decapitated head looked incredible. It looked,
I know,
it was above par.
That's great. So, I mean, sadly, for me, there's really four things, but three main things that are totally working for this. The kills, the nature and the gagginess of the kills, right? what we talked about before, the weirdness of delivery of things, like just this, we're like in a strange, upside down world where people talk like that. And the mom, like how there's 2 times when she literally just stands there not doing anything for like way too long. And it's kind of like that episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast where the whole episode is him just following like an ant or something like that. And it does that thing. This is like a very hard thing to get right. It does a thing where Family Guy tried it too, where the joke is dumb. And so you just go, whatever. And then they double down on the joke so far that it becomes, you're kind of like, whoa, what are they doing? Like they're actually going here? Like this is stupid. So you initially chuckle, then you think it's dumb, then it becomes so dumb and absurd that it becomes almost like more hilarious than you could possibly imagine. And in a way, the mom is doing that every time she's on screen. She's so over the top. I mean, she's screaming out of nowhere over things with her
the phone operator.
Yeah, her weird smoker's voice that sounds like she's just cooked. Like she can't even, like, it's just a rattle at a certain point because she's, who knows, maybe she screamed a lot, maybe she smoked 20 packs of cigarettes. Either way, or both. But like, it's so weird.
Well, in going down the list of what you liked, you didn't mention you liked the setting. So, I mean, you did mention you liked the setting, but didn't listing.
That was the fourth thing that I was sort of saying.
So maybe,
like, sure,
maybe you could go on. But I mean, I want to hear what didn't work for you because now I'm curious because I thought this was all pretty great. So you ready for that?
Yeah, sure.
All right, here we go. Next section, what did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Wow, I can't believe we talked so much about what worked on this movie. Like, that was a long conversation.
Well, it's because it's great.
It's great, but it's also so bad. And so, like, the movies like this really intrigue me. But here's what I really, really think, just like from a really basic standpoint. The reason it's bad is kind of what I mentioned before. The moments between kills, it feels like nobody knows what to do. And they're just kind of like going through the motions. And like almost every scene feels like we're on the verge of somebody just breaking character and looking at the camera going, I'm sorry, what are we doing? Like, what are we trying to do? But it never obviously gets there. So from just a basic filmmaking standpoint, to me, that's bad. Like, it's not good to feel that way. And I feel like I said before that having no point of view, we talked about this with, what was it? The Strangers Pray at Night, I think, where it just feels like the director doesn't understand how human beings exist or work or think or any of those things. And so you're left with these weird moments of just like non-normal human behavior. And so from that point of view, I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. And so to me, it's like, and that's true in a lot of respects. It's true in how shots are constructed. And the weird thing is like you said, there are shots that are really good in this. And there are moments that are really good visually. But then there are these...
I don't know if I said that.
Well, I mean, in the sense of that you liked the visuals of certain moments.
I wouldn't say it was well shot overall. I loved him walking at camera, but that was because of him.
Yeah, but that's a composition, right? That's a compositional decision. And so so much of this film is shot way too bright. There's like camera motivation is non-existent. It's like we're just literally being like, let's just get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate feeling that way as a viewer, where I'm like, oh, they don't even want to be there. They're just trying to like get it done because somebody said, and I don't know that this is true. This is just like this is how it makes me feel, that they don't think that this is a worthwhile venture. And like, that sucks because then it feels lazy and it feels kind of uninspired. And no matter what the actors try to do to like at least bring what they have to offer to it, without somebody sort of, aiming them or literally directing them, it just feels kind of like afloat, adrift in a sea of who cares. And I don't know, it was hard for me to stay engaged at all. Because I just kind of was like, well, if they don't care, why should I? And that's a bummer. And it makes me sad as a filmmaker because somebody gave them money to make a thing. And then they kind of were like, I don't know. It feels like, I have no idea if this is even accurate, but it just feels like they didn't care.
I feel like that could be partially true, but I think it's the sense I got from all the behind the scenes that it was more that it was rushed versus no one caring.
Okay. That sucks too. Yeah, when you're trying to just get through that's actually pretty accurate. It feels like nobody had rehearsal. It feels like nobody had the time to properly set the shots up.
Right.
They didn't have enough budget or time to actually do something visually interesting with the lighting. So yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But that's a bummer.
The flip side, though, is those same circumstances is what dictated the actors having sort of a lot of free reign and a lot of other people just on set to just, make those decisions that led for such a unique and now kind of cult status experience.
Right.
I mean,
but that's really interesting because I think that as a unintended consequence, that's great, but that's a really bad circumstance to be under. You know what I mean? Like you should be able to make a movie where you can, you should, in a perfect world, which doesn't exist for any filmmaker ever, you would want to be able to have at least be afforded the time and energy to make the movie, at least attempt to make the movie something worthwhile. And like, great, I'm glad the actors were able to have free reign, but you should be able to do both in a perfect world. You should be able to make the movie good and give your actors free reign to find these weird moments.
It's weird though too, because like I think of there's a shot where they're outside and like the actor who's talking, she's just like totally blocked half the scene because of the blocking. But that's like what makes it fun when you're sitting there watching it with people. It's like you're just cracking up and about it all. I don't know.
But that to me, that's such a secondary reality. That's the Tommy Wiseau effect, right? Like taking pleasure in incompetence is its own thing. That's a separate like reality to whether or not the film is good. And I actually get prickly when people are like, like it's so bad it's good, bordering on its genius. Like, no, it's not fucking genius. It's bad. It is just bad. And you are finding a way to enjoy how bad it is.
I hear where you're coming from. I think the exception to that, if you call that a rule, your statement there about things being able to reach what feels like a genius level, Troll 2 is the exception, I think.
Okay, I'll have to revisit Troll 2. It's been a while. but actually, so to that point, I think the key element in how this type of film lands is what we've talked about before, where it's like point of view, really. Like, are you aware, like when you're making something that's inherently campy, or like, are you aware as the filmmaker? And awareness, I think, matters a lot, right? Like it can tip the scale. And you see, there's many examples of this. I know a guy who made a movie that just got, I won't say it because I don't want to trash him, but it just got panned. And what they kept saying is, this movie and the script is actually funny. And if you had leaned into the horror comedy component of it, it would have been amazing. But because you were trying to be earnest about the drama, you lost track of the fact that there's humor in this. And if you can marry those two things, you can really have something wonderful. And I think that this movie, Blood Rage, is doing that accidentally. And instead of like, somebody being like, hey, we actually have, lightning in a bottle here. Let's lean into it and let's make something crazy. I just don't feel like, I did not leave this movie feeling like they were aware. It felt, like you said, that it just was kind of rushed, and they put their energy where they knew they had to for a quote unquote slasher film.
But no one knows they have lightning in a bottle when they're making it.
Well, yeah. I think sometimes you get the tingle when it's happening, and you go, "Oh, I don't know, but I think we might have something."
I don't know.
I'm feeling the tingle.
Who knows? Though, okay, so I kind of hear what you're saying. We're like, just watching it by myself, I could feel toward the middle, maybe I was, it was feeling a little slower. Maybe it was starting to drop a little bit, but it's got like a high kill count, and those moments that are like the weird standout moments, they happen pretty often. That I feel like this is the kind of movie that could grow on you, grow on one in the right setting, because first time you're just kind of, expecting, I don't know, more of that or a lot of that. But then if you see, I don't know, a lot of the times if you see a movie like this again, you're so excited about those other, those moments that you worked for you the first time, that then all of a sudden you're able to settle into it more, and you pick up more on those in-between moments. You actually follow like what story there is a little better, and then have fun with whatever is weird and interesting about those aspects that may have not just totally grabbed you a first time in. So I don't know. I'd love to watch it again with people who I know would appreciate it, and I feel like it wouldn't be surprised if I enjoyed what may have been slowing me down this first viewing.
I don't disagree. I think that's an interesting just thing that happens. Here's a kind of a example that encapsulates that thing. When Karen is running through the locker room with the baby, and we know for sure that it's not a real baby because of the way that she's like holding it and
No. I wanted to talk about that all in the same shot. She's holding the baby in one arm coming out of the sliding glass door, and then all in the same, then goes, and you're like, okay, it's a fake baby. That when she sits down by the swimming pool holding the baby, nope, it starts moving. It's a real baby.
Well, when she goes into the locker room, and it's definitely a fake baby at this point, and she puts it into a cupboard, like a below sink cupboard, and then doesn't close. She tries to close the door, but she hasn't put the fake baby in far enough, so it's like its blanket or leg is sort of sticking out, and it prevents the door from closing. And then the actor just sort of is like, fuck it, and finishes her blocking in the scene, which is to run around the corner. It's like that to me, and this is why I'm saying this in what doesn't work. that completely encapsulates everything that's wrong with the circumstances of whatever they may have been of this movie that makes it bad. Because there is in no way at any time on any planet as a director should you have that be the take, right? Like, it's a mistake that is very clear and obvious. Just reset and say, just make sure you put the baby in all the way. So like that to me says they didn't even have enough film. Like that they, an economy of like how much film stock they could afford was, we can't even do that shot again because we can't afford to.
Okay. I hear that. I want to offer a different way of looking at it than just the enjoyment is laughing at incompetency, right? For me, it's a celebration of fuck it attitude.
Okay. But to what end?
To when it all just works in the end result somehow. When it's like clearly these were the circumstances. These were just people like I'm rooting for them, just like pulling all nighters, making this thing flying by the seat of their pants. You get them, girl.
I appreciate all of that. I really do, because there are times when you got to make do,
and you feel that in
film.
Those quote unquote mistakes. That's what I'm saying.
But even in those mistakes, and there's, Oscar award winning films that have mistakes, they find ways to at least kind of hide them. It's just a little bit.
It's the Larry
you
Cohen
could have
effect
cut around
I'm talking
that.
about,
You could have cut around that moment and been fine. And they just were like, nah.
Well, I didn't notice.
That doesn't mean it's good. But okay,
bad.
so secondary to that, or like the continuation of that thought is that then becomes the thing like that we in a group watch and laugh at, and we end up, it becomes endearing. And so to me that's a really interesting and weird, just reality of things being kind of, I don't know, inherently bad or poorly done, but like charming enough to overcome it. So I don't know. Cool.
All right.
You can always cut around it, guys.
All that enough where you'd only want to stream it again.
Yeah.
You ready for things of note?
Sure. Oh, well, yeah, let's do things of note. Yeah, I'll say some stuff in there.
Here we go. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Can we just talk about... This is noteworthy because it's neither good or bad. Can we just talk about the wig work?
The wig work?
Okay, so when we finally get to a point where Todd and Terry are in the same room and we're having to do this like classic thing of like, there's a stand-in with a wig on that's like doubling for one of the two twins. And every time they switch back and forth, it's basically the same guy wearing the same shitty wig, even though like they've made a point in this film to show that Todd has curly hair and Terry has a blowout. And then they like do this over the shoulder stuff in that whole pool scene where it's just like some dude with like a not really great matching wig. It just cracks me up that that's where we're at. And like there's a moment too where right when Terry, oh God. So Todd is getting pulled out of the pool and Terry has his back to camera. It's all kind of one long shot and the mom comes in and she shoots him. I actually couldn't figure out which was the real actor and which was the stand-in. I was like, wait, and if it's the real actor with its back to camera, why show just his back in that shot. So I'm like, that has to be the stand-in. But he's in the foreground. He's the focus of that moment. Why would you put the stand-in with his back to us in that moment? It's so many things about it don't make like logical sense. I guess because the actual actor is getting pulled out of the pool and we kind of can see him, but like you could just hide him. He's in the background. He's far enough away. So there's like, I just think the whole thing is like, it's confusing. It's not good or bad. It's just really confusing.
I love to see. Yeah, no, that was fun keeping track of who's who in the shots. I like that. I did forget to mention in what works. Shout out to, Mark Soper, talking all about the interesting choices, but I genuinely appreciated his differentiation of the two brothers. His dual performance was great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he made very, very clear decisions between the two, which is great.
Yeah. Great. All right. So for some things of note here, we already went over all the working titles: Complex into Slasher, into Nightmare at Shadow Woods, into Blood Rage. And yeah, in his little interview, Mark Soper said, kind of like I already said, felt like he could make choices. And he likes to think that explains the appeal, that they tapped into something people can connect to. And then Louis Lasser's interview, I already said, she said the dead husband scene was the hardest acting she's ever done. Some quotes from her too. She thought like her choices, they added an oddness to her character. She said it just felt right at the time to do something really out of left field. And it felt like, her character just had her own separate story going on. And then she used the phrase too, kind of like I said earlier, everything is just flying by the seat of your pants when they were making it. And just to point out of this, I thought this was funny. Her interview, her like 10-minute interview from Arrow Video here on the special features, Moonlight Sonata was playing underneath the entire thing. It was the weirdest thing. just so you all know.
Okay.
And then we got, it was interesting how it was filmed in 83, but not released till 87. So it's one of those.
Oh.
So it's kind of unique to like, it's where you can picture it more being amongst the early 80s slashers. And by the time it was released, though, it wasn't quite doing what the late 80s slashers films were doing. So it's kind of interesting to look at it that way. It's a last bastion of a certain kind of 80s slasher within the 80s.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, actually. I was surprised when I saw that it was 87. So just circling back to Ed French, really like a wonderful career here. He was nominated for an Oscar, he's won Emmys for makeup. So he's legit, and I think that really does show that that's part of why all these kills were just so spectacular in this, because you had somebody who was crushing it his whole career working on this, even, and thankfully you didn't have them suffer from the same potential malaise that you could if the case were that people were kind of not into it. Like they at least really he crushed these makeup effects in this. He did Undiscovered Country, the Star Trek, 6.
Oh, okay. Great.
Best makeup nomination, Oscar. He did Westworld. I mean, he's still working. He did the HBO Westworld show.
It was funny. He said he was, very much like a lot of people of his ilk, just inspired by Fangoria and all that, and would, look at the work of the other greats, his peers, and get inspired. And kind of similarly to like the Tom Savinis and stuff, thought, I'll just have like a cameo in every one of my movies kind of thing would be fun. And so that's sort of, I think, what led to his role in this film. But it was after this role in this film when he was like, nah, I'll just stick to to doing the effects, being behind the camera.
So what you're saying is that that the Blood Rage killed his dream of being an actor.
The fun of I think just as far as where he wanted to put his energies and responsibilities on set.
Fair enough.
He didn't say it though, like because of Blood Rage. It was just kind of like, whatever. last but not least, got to shout out Ted Raimi, and I believe his first ever role pre the roles of his, from his older brother, as he's credited as condom salesman, but I think it'd be more appropriate to describe him as a condom dealer. So there's a little 3-minute interview with him on the disc too.
Just for that one scene.
Yeah, I know, it's so funny, but no, there's a good story behind it. So you remember this, even though it came out in 87, shot in 83. So he was, when he was 19, he was, he got his driver's license removed for a year because while he was living in Detroit, his home, for accidentally hitting a cop car, driving too close. He said he wasn't on anything or drunk or anything. He just didn't see it, whatever, made a mistake. So because he couldn't drive anywhere, he thought he'd move to New York and try his shot at acting. And, typical dad of the era, was very concerned and said, okay, son, but here's our deal. If you can't book a job in 1 year, you got to come home and work with me at my business. And Ted said, okay, dad, deal. And so he said he must have knocked on 1,000 doors, given his resume to 1,000 different agents, worked so hard trying to get a job. The year went by doing that, couldn't get anything. And he wrote a letter to his dad sort of admitting, it didn't work out. You're right, And then 2 days later, after writing that letter, he, lo and behold, got this part in Blood Rage.
Wow, it really broke him.
No, it's great. It's one of those stories where just as soon as you kind of give in, something works out.
Yeah, it's always that's an old, I'm sure everybody, well, maybe not everybody listening, but it's a very common phrase in LA. If you want to book a job, book a flight, meaning, does that make sense?
Yes.
The second you're like, oh, I'm going to go out of town for a little while because nothing's happening. You will get an audition. Or a job.
All right. So Blood Rage, or as you said earlier, I wanted to shout out, I like to put emphasis on rage, Blood Rage.
Yeah, Blood Rage.
There we go. And so if that's it for Blood Rage, we can wind down with RecommenDEADtions as we liked to do. Tim, anything you'd like to quickly recommend for us?
I've seen some good stuff lately, but I gotta say, I mentioned him earlier, and this is why I was even thinking about it. Weird Al. I love Weird Al. My whole childhood was seeped in my enjoyment of Weird Al. I had the pleasure of meeting him and hanging out with him for an hour in his home once. It was goddamn incredible. And he's the nicest dude ever. His wife is amazing. I met Jamie Lee Curtis at his house. It was crazy. It was a crazy experience. And I just watched his movie, Weird, starring Daniel Radcliffe. And it is true to everything I know and love about him. It is absurd. It's a very specific brand of humor. I realize now how much of my personal humor is actually, influenced by him. When I went and got Blood Rage at Videotech, I had to also get UHF so I can watch that again. A movie that my brother and I watched many, many times and love dearly and have not seen recently. So I'm extremely excited. So I'm going to recommend Weird, the Al Yankovic story.
I loved it too. I watched it the hour it came out. I was so excited.
Yeah. I was I didn't realize it had come out, and I was like, oh my God. Just stop everything.
Right. No, same here. So good. Great. Glad you enjoyed it too. All right. Well, I'm kind of catching up with my recommendations on any highlights from my October horror movie viewings. And, always thinking how I'm more and more nostalgic now, or seeing the appeal of the kinetic aughts era horror films. 13 Ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Fear.com is one. I won't shout out that one. I enjoyed that. But the one I wanted to shout out by the same director, Bill Malone, was the 1999 House on Haunted Hill.
Oh, yeah.
It really is just a bizarre, kinetic, just roller coaster of late 90s fun, which not just unique to that time, but I don't know. It just it really, really worked somehow. Like, it's old enough now where I can genuinely say they don't make them like that anymore, and maybe that's an okay thing, things go in, I think that is an okay thing. But I'm just, at the time when I might've been, bitter about them or whatever, not giving them a fair shake just because it so didn't feel like whatever I wanted at the time, my style. I don't know. I was really into it now. So yeah, from 1999, I thoroughly enjoyed House on Haunted Hill.
Someday we should break down the interconnected and not interconnected threads between The Haunting, The House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting of Hill House, and their many remakes and such of all of those, because it's pretty funny. Like, I'd have to go find an actual breakdown because it's like really convoluted, but it's hilarious how a lot of them and their remakes, because there's basically two there. I can't remember, so I'm not even going to try, but there's two different stories that had multiple versions of them over the years, but they all would come out about the same time and have very similar titles.
Yeah.
So there's like the 60s one or the, whatever, and the 90s one or whatever. Anyway, you get the picture, but I love all of those. And I almost always, when I hear one of the names, cannot figure out which one is being referred to until you give like more context.
Right.
But the one you're talking about is the Liam Neeson one, right?
No.
Oh my God.
That's The Haunting.
Oh, that's The Haunting. Okay, well, there you go. So wait, which one's the House on Haunted
This
Hill?
is the one with Jeffrey Rush, Famke Jensen, Chris Kattan, Peter Gallagher, where it's like they're tasked with staying inside and they'll get like $1 million to stay the night there.
Okay, so this is the one. This is a remake of the Vincent Price one.
Yes,
which was a comedy, right? I think
a millionaire
sort of
offering a group of people.
Yeah, I remember watching the original as a kid and being really freaked out by that.
Yeah,
but so you're right. Then there's The Haunting, which had remakes as well. But then there's also the Shirley Jackson. Is it Shirley Jackson?
She wrote the original Haunting of Hill House. Yeah.
And then there's the Mike Flanagan. Man, there's so many. Guys, pick a different title.
The Haunting of the House on Haunted Hill.
That's yeah, there you go.
Cool. Well, I know we just we're wrapping up here and already wrapped up Blood Rage, but we didn't even mention him because it is Thanksgiving. Didn't even mention the Thanksgiving aspects of it and how they were working. So just quick shout out, the pumpkin pie being thrown against the wall. And
right.
Lastly, the reference to all the cranberry sauce. So like they say in the film, in closing, that's not cranberry sauce. And thanks for listening.
That's right. And we'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Goodbye.
Bye.